Welcome to 3SN, everybody. I'm Alex DeLaverson, and with me is James, no doubt, Dotson. Today is a sad day in the Penn State community and for college football fans all across the country. Dotson, how you feeling?
It's just a sad way to go just considering how timing is, and it's sad for anybody, but especially someone, you mentioned it's a sad day for college football fans everywhere. It's a sad day for anybody who is even remotely knows anything about college football, because Joe Paterno is much more than a game. He's much more than a coach. He is a great human in every sense of the world, and the world is a much sadder place now with him gone.
Mm-hmm. Now, it is a sad day, and regardless how you feel about the whole situation, today and even yesterday, these next few days are not times to make shots or crack jokes or say anything mean. Our prayers, our thoughts should be with the Paternos, and for anyone who's affected by his loss. This is different between losing a public figure. You're losing a life, a father to his sons, a role model. Of course, I've always been critical about this whole Sandusky situation, but you never wish this upon a guy. And I never believed Joe Paterno let rape happen. I never believed he said he's going to let this happen for better, blah, blah, blah. And the thing is, we all have to keep into perspective here that people's lives are affected when someone dies, and no matter how you feel, it is a sad day. And
it's very sad, Alex, that you go through and you read any obituary that you've seen for Joe Paterno, and it starts Joseph Vincent Paterno passed away at age 85. He was fired 3 months ago amongst a sex abuse scandal. Mm-hmm. That's the first thing that you hear, and that should not be the first thing you hear, but that's what's recent news, and that's just a sad thing in my book. And just for all the great things that this man has done in 62 years as a Penn State coach, and this one chapter is sadly going to be the dark mark on his entire life. And we've said it so many times, one bad apple does not ruin the entire tree, but in terms of a man's life, it's very sad that being connected to this terrible man in Jerry Sandusky has turned this from a day of what should be a day of mourning of a man's great life into a day of mourning over a guy who many will unfairly, out of nowhere, just call him an old perv, and it's very sad.
And, this is not the Penn State scandal. This is the Jerry Sandusky and the Schultz scandal. This, like you said, not one bad apple, not a couple bad apples makes the whole tree bad. And people still should be proud to be Penn State, and people should still learn the lessons they have taught from Joe Paterno. It's sad. You're right. People are going to, at least outside the Penn State community, people are going to remember the final chapter of his life mostly.
That's the question. How will you remember Joe Paterno? I hope that you don't remember, the first thing at least that you don't remember is anything from this year, because this is not how he has spent his life. He has spent his entire career not as a football coach, but as an educator and a role model first. Unbelievable the things that you see around the campus, around Penn State community. You see the library with his name on it because Penn State kept raising his salary, so he kept giving more and more of that money back to the university. Mm-hmm. You go to the football building, you don't see trophies and accolades of all their great years of their national championships. Instead, you see things posted all around about the academic achievements of their players. You see the giant picture where 18 seniors graduated before they made the trip to a bowl game. You see the articles on doors that talk about how they have boasted one of the top 5 graduation rates among football players. He is an educator first. He was always a smart man. He forewent going to law school first. And this is stuff that people do not know about Joe Paterno unless you were in or around Happy Valley. And I think that's just a sad thing because now everybody, especially in the great world of social media, everybody remembers the present and everybody can have a say to say whatever they feel is worthy.
Let me ask you this, and I'll get to how I remember Joe Paterno in a minute, but how do you remember Joe Paterno if you had to sum it up for us?
If I have to sum it up, I remember it. I never personally met the guy, and I'm disappointed that I never did, but pretty much any Penn State student who hasn't met him would say the same thing. What I remember most from him would be from earlier this year, actually. It was the night before the game against Alabama, and he goes up to the microphone at the pep rally up in Rec Hall. And as he steps behind that microphone, just the sheer, I don't want to call it awe, but just respect that everybody has for him, but then the respect that he gives back to everybody around him, students, his players, his staff, everybody. And he goes up there, this weak 84-year-old man with the raspy, weak voice, and all of a sudden, it's not an 84-year-old man up there. You could have thought that it was some 30-year-old just in full energy, full force, and the most passionate, dedicated speech I've ever seen, but he's still a man of old school. He says, as he's trying to explain how upset he is that he has to be walking with a cane, says, "I'm so sick of having this, pardon me, ladies, this damn cane." It's the things like that that you will always remember about Joe Paterno. He was funny, he was honest, always honest, truthful, and just passionate about everything he does, always family first, this entire group is a family, always education first. And just in that one speech, to see the passion that a man can exuberate, but also, as he's doing that, still be putting forth the ideals of tradition, family, and athletics second, everything else first.
Well, like you, I've never met Joe Paterno. I go to a Penn State branch campus, so all I know is the stories and everything I read and heard about him. And I will clear some things up because some people are confused about my thoughts and everything, and even I wasn't sure how I'd react. I never blame people for believing Paterno because that side of the story is definitely believable. You know what I mean? And at the time, my problem was, people, the students rioting, taking things too seriously. But like I said earlier, this is a man dying, and he has done a lot for the community. I was more along the lines as if it needed to happen. And do I think Joe Paterno could have done more? Yeah. I don't think in his mind he meant this to happen. But, people make mistakes, and it's not just him. It's Schwartz, blah, 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 all those people. But sometimes, you have to pay responsibility for what happens. If it's a mistake, it was a great one. I don't know if it was. That's just my guess. But the thing I'll remember most about him is probably what you said, too, is his voice, is his demeanor. He had the bow tie and the black shoes and the way he ran out there. You know what I mean? And that's not a guy that's a bad guy. I mean, Joe Paterno is not a bad guy. He seems, to me at least, he made a mistake, but you don't kill a man for it. You know what I mean? And lung cancer, did the guy over. That combined with the broken heart sped things up. It's a sad story, but you know what? Honestly, I think since his death, I think the media, everyone else, it seems like you hear now more good things. Now everyone wants to talk about the good things because people realize this is death. And you see all the tributes in the Beaver Stadium with this picture on it. You hear everybody talking about it. You know what? It's like now things are starting to change. And it's ironic, isn't it, Dawson? He wasn't allowed to speak before. And now we'll never know for sure what really went on. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
it's ironic.
It's very ironic. It's very sad. I mean, 85-year-old man, is no longer with us. And, I mean, that's the bottom line. That, I mean, you said it before, we need to say it again. Our thoughts and prayers need to go out to all of the Paterno family, all of his friends, anybody who knew the guy. I mean, honestly, I go back, I look through Twitter posts, and I see some of his former players, current players, saying just of how much he was a father figure to him. You don't hear that anywhere, and from pretty much any other coach, and that's just something that sets him apart. That's why he will be remembered, and that's why he should be remembered as a great man before even a great coach.
And that's what I like to hear, because, and you know, I've been saying this all the time, people should be remembered for who they are as a person, not if they're a good coach or if they're a good football player. That drove me crazy. People fail to realize Joe Pa was a very good dude, a very good man. And it is what it is, but you know what? I've been saying haven't hired a hell of a football coach the other day.
That they did. And you know what? Just to end this off, I want you to think back to any Penn State game you've ever watched, any Penn State game you've ever attended, and just think about what the game always what it always signaled, what it signified. You normally had this great powerhouse defense with a bunch of players who worked hard the entire game, and somehow down the stretch, they got a victory. I want you to think back to Joe Paterno's last game, as it would be. How fitting it was. His last game in defensive struggle, down 7-0 the entire game, a walk-on quarterback of all people leads a scrappy team down the field, put them up 10-7, and then in a great moment in Beaver Stadium history where the entire student section migrates behind goalposts. It's the great migration with over 30,000 students rushing there. The ball might have been in the air for a field goal kick less than 3 seconds, but it felt like 30 minutes as over 100,000 fans wait in silence. This kick is no good. Just a great moment as it is, and now to look back on it and see that, yes, that was the last game in the Joe Paterno era, very fitting in my mind. And honestly, that's the way I would like to remember him as the coach,
and honestly,
would be in games like that.
And honestly, I really think the whole Sandusky thing will die down. It will. People, 10, 20 years down the road, I think they won't look at the final chapter. You know, of course the chapter's always going to be there, but I think they'll realize Joe Paterno, for the most part, was indeed a good book.